If you'd like to become a professional speaker using your words to create influence, or you want to understand how to lead your sales team better, you want to be able to craft a message that moves and inspires people, I'm going to share with you a few things today that are going to help you out dramatically. Number one, you have to understand this. Before you can ever properly and effectively speak to someone, you need to understand who that person is. I'm going to dive into this first because oftentimes when you think about speakers and speaking well, you think about the people that are the most articulate, the people that have the best story, or that have the most wide range of words to use. And to be honest, those things are great, but that is not the first step. And most people get hung up on that and they don't deliver a message in a way that resonates with the other listeners. Here's what it is. It's understanding human behavior. Who is that person? What is their fear? What is driving them? How do they receive information? How do they actually communicate? Because the way that we communicate and the way that we receive information are completely different. Are they a visual person? We have different representational systems in which we process information. I can say the same thing in 3 different ways and resonate with 3 different people. For example, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic type of people. I can say, hey, and do you guys see what I'm saying right now? A visual person, they're going to say, yeah, I could see that. But how do you see what I'm saying? You can't see the words, but that's how people process information. The second type of person is a auditory person. And you can say, hey, and do you hear what I'm saying? Does that ring a bell? Does this sound familiar? And you start to say things like this to the auditory person. They're like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. Or the other person is a kinesthetic person. Do you feel me? Can you get a grip on what I'm saying? And it's someone who's actually trying to get a grip. They're literally thinking about it from a kinesthetic standpoint of the words that you're using. And then we can go deeper. Auditory-digital, does this make sense? People that process information in their head. But what I want you to understand is this. When you have these tools at your disposal, you become a master of communication. And when you speak, and I hear this often, I don't say this to brag, but very humbly, but also very direct so you guys can see the power of it. People always say, what you said, it resonated so deeply with me. I felt like you were talking directly to me because I was. And I was talking to everyone else there around as well, especially when it's one to many. But I deliver the message in a way where people are going to understand it the best. There are people that are great experts at what they do. Maybe you're an expert at the skill that you have. Could be sales, could be marketing. You're creative. Maybe you just want to share your story of faith. Maybe you have a message deep down within you of things that you went through that you want to share with other people so they avoid certain pitfalls or so they gain lessons that you have. But if you can't deliver that message in a way where people truly want to hear it, your message is going to fall flat and you're not going to be able to impact people in the way that you want to impact them. And so often people focus on the words that you use, but the words are such a small portion of what actually makes up the emotional intensity of communication. And there was a study done years and years and years ago about, if you think about communication sort of like a chart, and the total chart is 100%. And if I were to ask you what percentage of your words make up communication, what would you say? Most people would say 50, 80, 90, etc. But the 3 components are your words, your tonality, and your physiology. Physiology is body language. It's, do I have a smile on? Are my arms crossed? If you guys were to meet me at an event, my arms are crossed, I'm up against the wall. I don't need to tell you anything that I want to meet you. I'm excited to be here. My physiology is saying so much more than my words or tone ever could. Same way if you meet someone and they say, hey, yeah, good to meet you, good to meet you. Look at how my eyes go down. Yeah, good to meet you. Look at my body language. Yeah, I'm showing it's whatever. It's not a big deal. But people don't realize how often they do this. Or maybe you've done this with a spouse and got in trouble before, and your spouse is like, I love you. You're like, yeah, I love you too, as you're walking out the door, or love you. And they don't feel that love coming from you. They don't feel what you're saying. So your words and the way you deliver them are in conflict. They're going 2 different ways. And anytime something is out of alignment, it's not going to be in a way that's effective. And when you understand this, you start to become a master at making sure that your words and your tone align. And it's an art, it's a science to do this. And I want to share this story is that a lot of people have said, oh, well, it's easy for you, Cody. Of course, you're going to be able to deliver a great message. You've studied communication. You're a great communicator. You have these gifts. And it's funny because I'll laugh and be like, they're not gifts at all, actually. They're skills, sure. I've developed these skills. I've spent a lot of time, money, energy developing these skills, a lot of it, a decade. But they're not gifts. I wasn't given these things. And in fact, I grew up a very, very shy kid to the point where I have stories that are embarrassing of girls that I found attractive that I knew even found me attractive. And I couldn't say a word to save my life. I had like a cat had my tongue. I couldn't even utter a word when I was next to these girls. I would just shut down completely. It's like my entire mind, body, and language would just completely go blank. And I wouldn't say anything. And I couldn't say anything. I couldn't make new connections. I couldn't make a lot of friends. And I had a lot of acquaintances of people around me, but they were all very, very surface level. To be honest, I didn't even know how to ask proper questions to get to know someone. I would ask very transactional questions at the surface level, not because I didn't care, but I just didn't know how to ask. And a lot of this too, going deeper with my background as an NLP trainer, we have different fears, insecurities, beliefs, fears of being vulnerable, fears of being seen if we're actually sharing who we are. We have different insecurities about, man, are we going to be judged? Are they going to reject me? And these things stem from years and generations ago, even back to the early tribe days. People were afraid of being rejected from the tribe. You might be afraid of being rejected because you have the iPhone 14 and not the new 16 or 17. And whatever that might be, we have these little things where we want to put on this image. And if we don't have this image, we think that we're going to get judged. Or if we ask a certain question, we think we might be pushy on a sales call. Or if someone shares something with us, we have a fear of going deeper because it's that vulnerability, that intimacy that we're afraid of. And we don't know we're afraid of these things. If I were to ask you, you'd probably say, no, I'm not. But if I were to ask certain questions or ask you to tell stories, I can hear and I can find out subconsciously these fears are there. And we've all had them. A lot of us do have them in different areas. Some people might have them in other areas that are different, but this is specifically around communication. How do you know you have these? Well, you feel like you can't get your message out to the world. Your message is not strong. You feel like when you speak, people don't listen. You have a fear of being vulnerable, of being intimate. You don't ask questions to go deeper. Maybe you feel like you don't have really deep relationships with people. Maybe you just feel like you have some sort of story inside of you and you want to share it with people, but you don't know how. These are times where you look at communication. This is what I specialize in. I specialize in helping with 5 things. Number 1, we work on the identity, the belief system, the values that you hold around yourself, around speaking, around communication, around your worthiness. We go very deep into that level. Number 2, I have these written down. We go down to then the human behavior side of it. Like I started this whole entire message with, people oftentimes want to know how to become a great speaker. How do I overcome objections? Well, you got to know the person on a deep level. You got to know their fears, their desires, their pain points, who they are, how do they receive information? How do we craft our story in a way that resonates with these people? That's the human behavior side. Next, phase 3 is we work on effective communication, knowing how to use your words intentionally, being able to identify if you're using like, right. A lot of people say that after things that they say to try to gain approval, or you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? A lot of times people will say this overly using it because they're trying to get validated because they don't know the next thing to say. It's just a filler word. And you guys might notice now that very rarely will I say the word or like. Very rarely will you hear me say that. So we get into the effective communication, how to use your words intentionally, how to choose your words, the power of brevity. If you can say something in one sentence, don't use a paragraph to say it because the rest is just watered down fluff with your little bit of value. Then we get into your tone, how to use your tone intentionally to spark curiosity or to command the room, how to use your physiology and your body language so they're all 3 congruent. Every bit of that section is congruent, your words, your tone, and your physiology. Then after that, what we go into is actually getting very good at figuring out what story do you have inside of you, because we all have one. You have a story inside of you that the world needs to hear. You have a story inside of you that the world needs to hear. And once you share that story, you have the ability to unlock other men and women that have went through the same thing you've went through, but you give them permission to heal by showing your scars first. By showing what you went through, you give other people permission to say, this is okay. And you unlock inspiration. A lot of times you can unlock an impartation on their life, and you can share your message with people that want to actually hear it, that need to hear it. That's your gifting right there. Some people if you're in business, maybe you do a podcast, maybe you do social media, or maybe you just want to be a more influential communicator on a sales call, in a meeting that you're in, as a husband, at your home life with your kids, understanding that your words hold power. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. I'm going to say that again. Proverbs 18:21 says that death and life are in the power of the tongue. Our tongue is like a rudder that steers the ship on where we go. Because what we found is that our words don't just describe what we see, they create what we see. The language that we have is based upon the thoughts and the beliefs that we've held. The thoughts and the beliefs come down from our values. So when you can understand how to shift your language, man, you don't just become a powerful communicator, your life begins to change because you're not speaking negative things over yourself. You may have heard the study, but it said that about 90% of our thoughts that we've had are the same thoughts we had yesterday, the day before that, and the day before that. And if you think about that, dude, you're thinking you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. How many of those are negative without even knowing? And so just being aware of your words allows you to regain power over your own life. So after we get into the effective communication part, after we get that story out of you, we then craft it in a way where people actually want to hear it. And we work on building blocks. We work on different understandings of what I'm saying and how it makes sense for the audience that I'm speaking to. And we can structure, once we have your story, we can structure it in a way where it's a 5-minute speech. It can be a 10-minute speech or a 1-hour speech because we're adding different building blocks. We're opening and closing different loops in your story, and we can build upon this. And the great thing here is that when I help people craft a story, you have a lot of material that you get to take home. So you're studying, you're tangibly looking at stuff after our calls as well. But more importantly, it's not just one story. You have the framework that you use. The context is there. Any bit of content, which is your story, can be changed in there. So if you're sharing your story at a church service, or you're sharing it on a sales meeting, or you're sharing it to someone that you meet on the street to show who you are, it can be interchanged based on you understanding the framework. The blueprint, the framework doesn't change. It's there. But how you tell it, why you tell it, when you tell it will change. And if you think about it this way, think about an elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is designed the time that you're at the bottom of an elevator to the top, how well and how quickly and how concisely and effectively can you share what you do from a business setting. If you get very good at that, and that's a muscle where you can just fire it off, not from a script on ChatGPT, but truly knowing that at the subconscious level, how much more money are you going to make over the course of your career? Dude, probably a ton. How many more connections are you going to have just in your circle from a networking standpoint? Probably a ton. That's the power of learning effective communication. So if you have a story deep inside of you that you know the world needs to hear, if you just want to become a more effective communicator to impact the people around you, or you want me to help you craft a story that moves an audience, it's my pleasure to serve you. I want you to click the link here in the description. You'll see next steps, how you can work with me directly one-to-one to make this happen. Looking forward to hear from you. Bye-bye.